the life of Sarah, and I translate now directly, were 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. The question is, why doesn't it simply write it was 127 years? As we can do it in English, it could be done in Hebrew. I want to point you to such observations. And the rabbis, the rabbinical tradition made itself, how shall I say, think about this. And one rabbi said, and I like that the most, he said, when Sarah died, she actually had the wisdom of being 100 years old. She had the beauty of 20 years and the innocence of 7 years old. Now, I'll leave that to you, whether you take it or don't take it, but there are things like this in the text. We should stumble over it. And you know, it continues, it says, and it was the life of Sarah that was 127 years, or 100 plus 20 plus 7 years. And then it goes on, and so the years of Sarah's life, you hear how often life is emphasized here. I like that. It's not the death. It goes on in verse 2, and Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, that is Hebron in the land of Canaan. But the emphasis and the name of the whole paragraph is the life of Sarah. And Abram came to mourn for Sarah, to weep for her. Maybe Abram had been in Beersheba, down the hills here, a few kilometers. Maybe he was just on a trip to look for his cattle or his sheep. We don't know the background. There is another possibility which the rabbinical tradition ponders, and that is that Abraham and Sarah at that time were separated because the challenges Sarah had been facing through living with Abraham were just too much for her. The whole thing that happened around Isaac. Maybe, some say, they died because of the shock it created for her that God asked Abraham to bring Isaac as a sacrifice, and Abraham even obeyed. She died here. And I brought you here to Hebron. You have here the place, exactly here, where Sarah died and where Abraham buried her. You see here the whole area. We don't know exactly where they lived in the Hain of Mamre. Today, it's an area where we have several 100,000 people living, Hebron. And it's kind of the industrial center here of the southern Judean hills. In the middle of it, we still can see the Cave of Machpela. And actually, I would like to take you there. Let's go there. Now you saw Hebron from outside, and I took you now inside Hebron. And this is the very point where tradition locates the Cave of Machpela, which we're talking about. Today's Hebron is the focal point of the conflict that we have today. And you might have heard the news in background stories about what was going on here. If I would take you inside this building, we have a synagogue inside, we have a mosque inside, and if I could show it to you from above, then you would even be able to distinguish a church from Crusader times or even from Byzantine times. We have a very old town here. Its history goes back at least 3,000, 4,000 years. When we came in, we saw the remnants of the old Jewish quarter that was destroyed. In 1929, there was a massacre here where 67 Jews were murdered, and it was always Jews and non-Jews living together here. If I take you here, every hole somehow has a story or a myth or people tell something about it. We have here a hole that says it's the entrance to the Garden of Eden, and with that we also come to the old original name of this town, Hebron. In Arabic it's called El Khalil, which both Hebron and Khalil point to the fact that Abraham was the friend of God, but the old original name was Kiryat Arba, which is the town of the four. And we have the tombs of three couples here inside. One is Abraham and Sarah, the second one is Isaac and Rebekah, the third one is Jacob and Leah. Now, who is the fourth couple that, according to tradition, some explain it that way, would be buried here? It would be Adam and Eve. So you see, there's a lot of, it's loaded by all kinds of stories, all kinds of traditions, and we, in the next series, we want to go back to the biblical text and see what we see here in stones outside, what we have in the Bible about that.